Maman died today, or yesterday maybe, I don't know. This opens the novel we'll be discussing today in part, a novel that's been read by over 10 million people and has been described as one of the most well-accepted works of existential fiction, alongside Sartre's Nausea. This opening line has been described as portraying an important characteristic trait of the anti-hero in the novel Meursault, a character trait that ultimately leads to an execution. But before we get into that, we'll take a look at the opening of The Stranger by Albert Camus and see what is revealed about the narrator and why this opening sentence is one of the most recognizable in all of literature. Not only is it an incredibly, arguably impossible sentence to translate from its original French to English, it is a sentence that in many ways repeats throughout the work, which in the end reflects a philosophy that Camus would spend much of his career discussing, changing certain aspects as he continued to write. The Stranger begins with the narrator addressing the death of his mother. This straightforward and impersonal declaration is told to the reader by Meursault. It reads as more of an annoyance, something that disrupts his day, and we immediately come to find that Meursault does not appear to be attached to this situation, that being the recent death of his mother. But apart from the disinterest that he portrays, this sentence tells you a lot about how Meursault lives in time. This is a character who seems just as much removed from the past as he is from conventional attitudes toward such situations. His immediate thought is to place the time of his mother's death within the moment in which he receives the news on that day. Everything for Meursault is present and exists within the moment he perceives any given situation. With no previous knowledge of who this character is, the reader is thrown into a situation that has no choice but to be apathetic and detached from the narrator. This characteristic of Meursault has led many to take him as being a representation of the mechanization and depersonalization of modern life. A character who, on first read, seems to have somewhat of an antisocial disorder. The second sentence that is communicated to the reader has Meursault questioning himself if his mother had truly passed on that day or the previous day, as he had only received a telegram that informed him of her passing. He admits that he doesn't know and then simply moves on. It is important to note here, as I've seen it said multiple times, that he forgets the day that his mother passed away. However, this is not true. He simply never knew the day in which his mother died. The reason this is important to distinguish is that it is the difference between being indifferent, which he seems to be, and being unobservant or obtuse, which he certainly is not. Apart from the weight of the situation, one which would typically mark a memorable moment in one's life, Meursault is unable to bring himself to care enough to inquire about the exact day. He simply reads the telegram stating that his mother is deceased and that there will be a funeral the following day. He then states, "That doesn't mean anything. Maybe it was yesterday." The sociology of Meursault is captured with this opening in such a way that reveals a passivity accompanied with a tensity that is shared between every relationship that Meursault holds throughout the novel. Now, for anyone who has read this short book will know, Meursault holds this attitude toward nearly everything in life, which ultimately leads to him being sentenced to death for a murder. Though we'll get more into that in the next video, he does end up murdering an Arab on a beach, shooting him 5 times. After being interrogated, the prosecutor declared him to have no remorse for his actions. Meursault admits this is true and that he did not regret his actions that led to murdering the man. However, he then admits that he has never been able to regret anything in which he has done in his life, and that he has always been preoccupied with what was about to happen that day or the following day. Now we take this with the opening two sentences of the book, and we are given a truer glimpse of who Meursault actually is. The reasons in which Meursault seems to be more annoyed with hearing the news about the death of his mother, and later seems to be more annoyed with what he has to deal with after murdering another, has more to do with a personal belief of his and not so much due to any cognitive antisocial disorder. Meursault is a man that has accepted the absurdity of life, concluding that there is no ultimate meaning or purpose for his life on Earth. And after his life on Earth, there is nothing waiting but nothingness itself. As soon as he leaves this world, there will be no difference to him if he had ever existed or not. This belief was not a typical understanding of life for the common people of his time, and clearly was not the understanding of the jury when sentencing him to death. Throughout the court hearings, the jury seemed to be more intent on hearing a confession of regret for his actions than they were anything else. It seemed as though if Meursault had only shown remorse for his actions, he could have escaped the death penalty. However, this does not happen. When asked why he had killed the man, he simply states he was blocking the sun. Because of Meursault's personal understanding of the world around him, he is forced to live each moment as it occurs in time, without hesitation or a future that may restrict a kind of more personal freedom. The fact is, he did not regret the murder, as he did not see a reason to regret the murder. The man that he had killed at that moment had no feeling one way toward it or the other, as he simply no longer existed. And this is seen within the very first sentence and the reason for his indifference toward the death of his mother. His emotions would be for no one, because that person did not exist in the moment that Meursault would have experienced these kind of emotions. Meursault is concerned with the material world, and there is nothing outside this material world that can be said to exist with absolute certainty. Once an individual leaves the material world, one simply ceases to exist. For Meursault, crying at his mother's funeral or showing interest in the exact time of her passing would have been a lie. And when questioned about this during the trial, he simply told the truth about how he felt. The reason for feeling such a way was more due to his personal understanding of the world around him than it was anything else. Camus himself stated, though Meursault's truth was still appalling, it was still the truth. Camus goes on to state that he did not consider his character to be one with a social disorder, as one with sociopathic tendencies typically lies and manipulates for others to work in their favor, whereas Meursault does the complete opposite. He only tells the truth, which ultimately ends his life. Camus simply portrays a man that does not follow the expected attitudes found in common society, and it is this rebellion that sends him to the guillotine. In our society, any man who doesn't cry at his mother's funeral is liable to be condemned to death. I simply meant that the hero of the book is condemned because he doesn't play the game. The opening sentence of The Stranger sets the tone for the novel, and within 3 words, "Mother died today," Camus was able to tell more about his character than what many do by the end of the first chapter. And though this is better understood by the end of the novel, its impact on the reader is one that will surely stick. So I hope you got something from this quick analysis, and next week we will look further into the work and hopefully get a better understanding of the novel as a whole. But for now, have a great week, and hope you join me then.